This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review, and what I'm looking at today is 1992's Split Second, directed by Tony Maylam. And tell me if you heard this before, but the story revolves around this detective who exists in a future time, and his life is threatened by a being he doesn't quite understand. And you might be thinking that I'm describing a movie like Blade Runner, and in a sense I am, because what I'm looking at today is Split Second. And it's very similar plot-wise to Blade Runner, which is to say you have a police detective, in this instance played by Rutger Hauer, who also was in Blade Runner, and he is hunting down this entity that killed his partner, and this entity seems to reappear after a certain period of time. Now the thing of it is, this movie takes place in a future in which London is beginning to feel the effects of global warming, which is to say sea levels are rising, so there's a lot of water in this movie. Water all over the place, which is interesting. What isn't so much is that the production design isn't great. It's kind of drab and fairly dreary, but in any case, as I mentioned earlier, Rutger Hauer's partner was killed by something. And as a result, he's become a bit of an oddball on a police force, which is to say he does really odd things, and people don't quite understand why he does what he does, though no one wants to work with him. This killer makes an appearance again, and this is the entire problem with this movie. It takes place in the future, well, a future I should say. Yet, for some reason, the creature that is plaguing the city is something to do with black magic and Satanism. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, except that the movie never lays the groundwork for this happening. It's essentially, this detective goes about his day, and every decade or whatever, this creature pops up and begins to take people's hearts. It is a supernatural creature. It looks something like a shark mixed with the alien. But, as I said, there's no basis for this creature in the movie. The movie spends no time establishing a supernatural subplot where this creature comes into being. So it doesn't make any sense. And what's really weird about it is the movie takes place in the future. Why couldn't this be an alien? Why couldn't this be something otherworldly? Why couldn't this be, I don't know, something that escaped from a science lab somewhere? Why couldn't this be the result of global warming and climate change bringing this thing into being? Something that would make sense based on everything that's been established by the plot up to that time. Though, as I said, it's something brought about by evil. I mean pure evil, like devil evil type stuff. And it's dumb, without context. Another thing is that the movie doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Rutger Hauer chews scenery in this movie like he hasn't eaten for days. It's not a bad performance. It's just an overdone performance. He just runs riot with his lines. And it's not that it's not enjoyable to watch, but it's on top of a movie that, thematically speaking, makes no sense. And I get the feeling that Split Second is not at all the movie that Gary Scott Thompson, the writer, actually wrote, because it is just a mess. It's not terrible, it's not unwatchable by any stretch of imagination. It's just, production design-wise, fairly ugly. And when you combine that with a plot that doesn't make any sense, It's a movie that doesn't work, and things get even worse when we meet Detective Dick Durkin. Yes, that is his name. Played by Alistair Duncan, who is very much comedic relief. If the movie had better gelled, if there were some basis for its creature, if the production design were better, this could actually work. It would play in my mind very much like 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Instead, we just get, it's like a puzzle, I guess. And you're trying to fit pieces that don't belong together, and it's a mess. It is not a very good movie. It's interesting though. As I said, it's not unwatchable. It's just not very good. And the pity is that, and this is probably what I say about most movies that aren't very good, it could be really good with some tweaking along the way. Brighten up the color palette. There are more colors in the box than gray and off gray. Have Rutger Hauer, rest in peace, tone down his performance just a little bit. He's just too over the top. It's almost as if the producers of this movie saw Blade Runner, which came, I believe, 10 years earlier, and said, you remember how Harrison Ford was acting in Blade Runner? Don't do that. Be more florid. And just the basis of its antagonist needs to be made clear. You don't have a movie that is supposedly taking place in the future, yet have your antagonist be supernatural without providing a basis for that. Don't just do it, which they did, and it doesn't work. What most of you who have seen this channel before probably know is that I am not a fan of remakes unless they're justified. A remake of Split Second, in my mind, is justified because the premise is good. The premise is also not novel. You've seen this movie before. But it's a well-worn premise that could work. It doesn't work in this instance, but that's no reason why it can't work in general, because, as I said, it's not a new premise. And when you think about it, there's no reason why it shouldn't work in this movie. This is a perfect movie to be remade because, at least story-wise, it's relatively easy to make it work. Which, once again, begs the question, why didn't it in the first place? So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.